Solving quadratic equations using the square root property. So example 1, let's look at 3x squared equals 36. Now our first step is to isolate the perfect square term. And in our case, it's x squared. So first, we're going to need to divide both sides by 3. And we end up with x squared equals 12. And now our perfect square term, x squared, is isolated by itself on the left-hand side. Second step, take the square root of both sides of the equation. When I do that, the square root on the left cancels out the exponent of being raised to the second power because they're inverse operations, and we're left with x on the left equals plus or minus the square root of 12. When we take the square root of both sides of an equation in the process of solving an equation, we will get a plus or minus. We will get two answers. So please don't forget to put plus or minus whenever you're taking the square root of both sides of an equation. Let's simplify this radical on the right-hand side. So what's the largest perfect square factor of 12? That would be 4. So I can rewrite this as x equals plus or minus the square root of 4 times 3. And now I can break apart the radicals. So x equals plus or minus the square root of 4 times the square root of 3. And the square root of 4 is 2. So x equals plus or minus 2 radical 3. And then sometimes we need the third step to explicitly solve for x, but in our case, we have already solved for x. So x equals plus or minus 2 radical 3. We have two solutions. One is 2 radical 3, one is negative 2 radical 3. Let's look at a second example. 3 times the quantity x minus 4 quantity squared equals 15. So first, let's isolate the perfect square on the left-hand side, and we'll do that by dividing both sides by 3. And on the left-hand side, I'm left with x minus 4 quantity squared, which is a perfect square term. And now 15 divided by 3 is 5. So now we'll take the square root of both sides. And the square root symbol on the left-hand side will work with its inverse operation of squaring, and we'll be left with what's inside the parentheses, the x minus 4, and that equals plus or minus the square root of 5. And the radical here does not simplify, but now we do want to get x by itself, and we can do that by adding 4 to both sides of the equation, and we end up with x equals 4 plus or minus the square root of 5. Remember, this is two solutions, 4 plus radical 5 and 4 minus radical 5.